Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Power Pack episode of Xraised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. My name is Miles, and I'm here to unravel another story of innovation and tech with some of the brightest minds out there. Now, if you've ever been lost in a legal document and felt like you needed an Asian scroll deciphering team to make sense of it, well, today's episode is going to make your legal dreams come true. Returning to our show today is the phenomenal Laina Chan, an award-winning barrister, legal strategies, fearless advocate in commercial law, and the co-founder and CEO of MiAI Law. With accolades like Lawyers Weekly Female Barrister of the Year and being named one of the 2023's top 100 women in construction, she's a powerhouse in the legal arena. But here's the twist. She's not just a courtroom warrior, she's also a tech innovator. And alongside her is the co-founder and chief architect of MiAI Law, Fred Almeida, who's a seasoned AI entrepreneur with a mind wired for innovation. Having a track record of 3 successful exits in AI-driven tech companies, he's now set his sight on revolutionizing the legal profession with MiAI Law. Together, they're pioneering an AI-powered legal research tool that's not just about speed, but about trust and accuracy, and of course, empowering legal professionals worldwide. So let's dive into the fascinating intersection of law and artificial intelligence with Laina and Fred. Hello, guys. I'm happy to see you again, Laina. Welcome to the X-Rays community, Fred.
Pleasure to be here.
It's great to be with you again, Mel, and with Fred.
Thank you. I feel honored to have both of you here, and I'm excited to hear more about MiAI Law. So, Laina, you've had an extraordinary career as a barrister, and Fred, you're an AI expert with a history of groundbreaking innovations. We're familiar that legal profession is known for tradition, precision, and a lot of paperwork. So, AI, on the other hand, thrives on disruption and automation. So, what made your collaboration such a perfect match for building MiAI Law? And after Laina told me about you, Fred, I'm curious, how did the idea come to life?
Good. Lena, do you want to start it off? Maybe it's because you started all this mess.
I told, Miles, you mentioned how many documents there were, and I've been a barrister for a very long time. And so over that 20-year period while I was a barrister, I'd collected all my research, I digitized all of it, and I had all the materials from all my previous cases. And I also publish a lot. So I research and I publish a lot. So over that time, I've read well over 100,000 cases, maybe 200, I don't know, a lot of cases, and acted on a lot of cases, but I can't recall everything I've done at the tip of my fingers, and that really bugged me. So I reached out to Fred and asked him if there was a way that AI could help me, in effect, have perfect memory. And I reached out to Fred, and he told me that, sure, no problem, really easy. Your kids can do it over a weekend, which they did.
I did say that.
And then 10 months later of development, I think Fred has changed his view about exactly how easy
Yeah,
it
it's not easy. Yeah,
is. No.
the
I'm
law
sure.
is actually much harder than I thought it would be.
Can you
But
imagine, Fred, you're the one organizing the chaos.
yeah.
Exactly. What a great way of putting it, Fred. You're
Mm.
organizing the chaos. I'd met Fred at Harvard in 2019, and I learned that he had developed self-driving technology in Japan, which was subsequently acquired by Mazda in 2019. And for
Uh-huh.
me, I thought that he was the perfect person to help me, in effect, build a virtual lawyer.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, when we first started doing this, the I didn't really realize the complexity that the law really was. And then so when it started kind of unfolding and understanding what we wanted to do, um, the complexity of the project just grew into something really,
Group.
really quite interesting and fun. Yeah, it was like I guess the best way to understand it is like when Lena was talking to me, this is a year ago, I had just started a project working in medical AI, and medical AI is pretty tough, but one of the things I thought was really very different was in medical AI, you're dealing with research papers that may or may not be true, right? So there's I call it fraudulent data. or just badly structured research. And so you have to kind of try to guess, is this really true or not true? But with the law, I thought, well, obviously it's the law. There's no mistaking for like fake law. There's no fake law, let me put it that
Uh-huh.
way. But the problem though is that as we started really looking into it, it became more complex. And so we wanted to get to the point where like if you're going to do a system that has kind of a perfect recall, it's in our technical terms as we call it episodic memory, and you can just recall everything and you can apply it correctly to your current problem, so it's contextually aware of what you're doing. To solve that required just new technology that had not existed. And so we got to working on building that out. Um, so now we think that probably probably by the end of this year, we're going to be pretty close to perfect reasoning across legal documents and like basically almost perfect, I
Wow,
think.
great. Well, it's just
Yeah.
fascinating how legal expertise and AI innovation can come together to solve
Mm,
one of legal industry's biggest pain points. I mean, with the mountain of
mm,
data everywhere, if not organized, obviously it's a complete chaos. And AI indeed is transforming industries across the board, Fred. And
mm.
the legal sector, however, presents unique complexities. I think Lena and I touch on a bit about strict compliance requirements, massive data sets, and lawyers aren't exactly known for, embracing change quickly. So, Fred,
Mm.
from a technical perspective, what were the biggest hurdles in applying AI to legal research, and how did my AI law overcome them?
So of course the first problem is there's so much law, right? So just in Australia alone, we have over 800,000 legal documents, right? So
Uh-huh.
that's like law, legislation, regulation, and a few other things. You can put it all together. So you have to kind of sift through all of that data in order to respond to someone's request, right? And so the what we kind of want to figure out is how do we ensure that when a lawyer is asking a question about a case or a research point that he wants to kind of understand, that we're getting him the correct information in the correct jurisdiction in the way that gives him the best impact to his research. And so to do that, we had to kind of rethink how do we retrieve documents? How do we understand where the information that we're giving to the lawyer can be
Mhm.
confirmed. And so you have a reference or a link to the original source document. And it's almost really kind of a reverse lookup. You're basically saying, okay, I want this information. We go and find it, and then we give you the analysis, but we ensure that this analysis can be confirmed
Yeah,
so that there's
incredible.
no yeah, and so if you do that, then you get rid of the hallucinations that occur in a lot of language models, and you can build what the next piece of what our idea was is how do you bring, Lina's experience in research, legal research, into, what is normally very hard to control, which is a language model, right? Because this big multi-billion parameter space.
Mhm.
So we had to kind of figure out how to program a language model, not to not to engineer its answer, but actually to tell it what to do.
Yeah.
And so we created our own version of a reasoning model
Mhm.
that sits on top of a language model. But then the language model itself has the ability to reason as well. So it's like a layered cake of reasoning.
Mhm.
And then what that gives you is if you have a very contextually aware system, it understands what you're trying to find, and it can reason correctly at, a PhD level, super genius lawyer. And now you can process through that, and then you can start really building um, your research. What that means is like what would normally take you maybe 15 hours of work to solve, we can probably solve that in 15 minutes.
Compare.
And yeah, so it's a
Great.
compression and a quality increase, right? So you gain
Mhm.
time, so you can go deeper and wider. We call it breadth and depth. So you can get a much more clearer picture of what you're trying to understand when you have so many documents and so many things are changing.
Uh-huh.
And it's not just Australia. You can't even do this with just Australian data. You have to have the UK. You need to have Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have parts, in some cases you need American data, and that's just
Mm-hmm.
the bug. That's crazy American data.
I can't
But
imagine.
yeah, so when you add it all together, if you imagine you're a small research team working for a large client, you have a certain amount of time. What can you achieve if you have our tool with you? It's just
Yeah.
it's a multiplication. I think, Laina, you always say 20x lawyer, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we 20 times your performance, right?
Yeah.
So that you become, we're not saying you're becoming a better lawyer, but you're definitely becoming a
Well, I am
more
saying that.
depth. Yeah. Okay, you are saying that.
No, I am saying you become a better lawyer because, like Fred said, everyone
Mm,
has limitations of time and resources. So
Mm-hmm.
a client doesn't have an open wallet. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
working for the client without the help of AI, you have to limit how deep your research goes and how wide you look because,
right.
we only have 10, 12 hours a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we can't just keep looking and looking and looking, and our resources are limited. But with AI, we don't have that limitation. We can get our AI to traverse through the entire database, and it can
Mm-hmm.
simultaneously be searching a curated list of websites. It can be trolling through your own documents and then bringing all that together and returning the answer to you in a fraction of the time
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't even prior before within manageable human levels. So we have created a solution that is, I think, making you a better lawyer and 20xing you.
Yeah, wow.
Mm,
Well, it's accuracy is really critical here. I mean, we're talking about law, not just any industry, right? And
mm.
it's reference or database, and it's amazing. You mentioned Fred, 800,000 legal documents just in
At
Australia
least.
alone.
It's
Yeah.
more
And
than
Yeah.
that, Fred. It's
Mm,
800,000 in just cases. And I
yeah.
know we're interested in every single one of those cases, but on
mhm.
top of that, you have to layer all the legislation and all the regulations, all the
Yeah.
repealed legislation, so much, like millions. It really is in the
It's
millions.
millions of documents. It will probably end up becoming millions of documents. It depends to what extent we want to map it, but the regulations alone can be very, very, very large. I think in
Yeah.
the United States alone, there's 900,000 regulatory
Mm-hmm.
points that you need to. So how does it tie in? It's actually, I'll give you an example of this. I think Lena brought this up before, which was if you have a contract, for example, between you and another party, and some of your clauses are can be affected by the change in regulation or the change in law.
Mm-hmm.
So there, right now, the only way you can determine if your clauses are still valid is if you actually hire a legal team to go into all your documents, find those clauses,
Yeah.
and update them or invalidate them. So
It's time consuming.
yeah, so it's not even just research that we can help with. It's in a sense it's kind of like this always on 24/7
Mm-hmm.
checking every little thing, but updating you and notifying you that you may have an issue or you may not have an issue. You have to take a look at this and make suggestions of how to correct for it. So as the
Yeah.
regulation changes, then your contracts may have to change, or your research may have to change.
Mhm.
Your approach may have to change.
The strategy
Yeah,
may have to change.
Yeah, it's a
that's right.
domino
Supervision.
effect. And
That's
overcoming
right.
these challenges is what sets groundbreaking tech apart, Fred. And Lena,
Yeah,
traditional legal research has always been a painstaking process, right? Hours buried in
AI,
case law, mountains of documents, and high chance of human error. So my question is, how does my AI law change the way lawyers work? And what impact have you seen in real world applications?
well, let me give you an example of human error. So I was asked to research a particular new area of law, the enforceability of extended contractual warranties. So no one
Uh-huh.
had ever done this research before, and I was invited to do the research. I asked my paralegals to do it, and they kept saying they couldn't find anything. And two of them or three of them worked on it, and they said they couldn't find anything. So eventually I had to do it myself. So I started by looking through the research they had found, and buried within one report was the case that started it all. It was the case, the root case that everyone should look at. And then from there, all my research sprung from there. And two different human beings had research, found that underlying report, but didn't find that needle within that haystack. So I'm expecting that our AI wouldn't make that mistake. It would read that document and it would find it. Right, Fred?
Uh-huh.
It does. So, one of the things that we try to, from a technical point of view is how do we make our search and retrieval systems
Uh-huh.
pinpoint, right? And in most retrieval systems are more kind of in the area type of search, right? So it's kind of over here. We wanted to make sure that while we know it's over here, we actually go very deeply into the exact same spot, the exact spot that we can find the information we want. And so one of the things we've done is, I think, at least as far as the industry is concerned, we're probably the best retrieval system that you can probably get for law documents. So yeah, I do agree entirely that one of the things we can do that changes, I think, the fact is that we will actually find that needle in a million documents of law that you have to use to actually be a professional lawyer. Yeah. Which, can you imagine how hard that is? Like, there are not many lawyers that can actually actively use all a million documents of law points in Australia alone, just Australia. Add in UK, a few more million. So, it's a, but then the other side of it is, relevancy and confidence. And so one of the things we're doing is ensuring that when we do come back with the needles, it's not just a thousand needles, you
Uh-huh.
know,
It's
right? So
filtered.
it's filtering, it's recommending, it's looking at it from a point of view of like, are we optimizing your goals
Mm-hmm.
for your research? Do the facts of your case fit what we're returning you? So
Mm-hmm.
it's really having, I think Lena always called it a virtual lawyer. It's really having the perfect
Perfect,
partner sitting
perfect
beside you.
paralegal, right? Your
Yeah,
perfect PhD
level
with
paralegal. Yeah,
experience, but with
yeah,
experience so that they know how to direct the research and what is
yeah,
understand what is relevant, what is not relevant, what might work, what might not work. So just being the
yeah.
supreme being of lawyers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Assist.
if I actually I was talking to a friend about this, and we were saying like if you could, you would just our lawyer, our virtual lawyer would charge a very large price per hour normally, because
Yeah.
like you just wouldn't have this capability from a
Mm-hmm.
human, right?
Yeah.
So we are so in a way we're trying to create a superhuman legal research
Mm-hmm.
tool and to help companies become better. So if you're a small lawyer, if you're a single lawyer like a barrister like
Yeah.
Lena was, or you're a small team, this can completely change the way that you perform. Your
Mm-hmm.
your clients will be stunningly happy. And then if
Stunning.
you're a large, yeah, I think it would be. I mean, like
No, they should be stunningly happy.
yeah. Well, they're gonna still bill around the same hours, but now you're getting 20x the capability and
Maybe they can
performance. All the
increase the
things.
hourly
Yeah,
rate
we
because the
talked about that
quality,
previously. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
but actually the hourly rate can
Can you
probably
increase?
go
Yeah.
up because
Yeah.
you're bringing such better quality and value to the client.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I mean, if you're a large firm, if you have a large firm, you have thousands of lawyers working for you. You're now you're really competing at a global level where you can actually
uh,
work across nations quite quickly. You can,
mm,
arbitrate faster, less mistakes,
yeah, talk
higher quality
about
across. So
yeah.
there's benefits for every level
Mm-hmm.
across the industry, and we think we're uniquely positioned compared to our competitors. I think
Yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
we're super focused on one thing, which is how do we create a very reasoned, accurate lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And it promotes scalability regardless of the size of the
Of the
legal
firm.
team or the legal
Yeah,
firm,
That's right.
right?
yes.
That's
And
right.
your advanced search, retrieval, and filtering system makes it easier to find the right and relevant information they need. And that's the game-changing feature, I must say.
That
But
is that we're not only just returning cases, we're also answering your questions. So We
Yeah.
find the source data, we actually answer your question, and we
Yeah,
reduce everything to first principles, and we give you the pinpoint reference, which is
Yeah.
then
perfect.
cross-referenced to an external website. So you be confident that even though we're pointing you to a spot within our own proprietary database, we're also saying,
Yeah.
worry, we haven't made this up. You can
Uh-huh.
also find this case on an external website, and we'll point to that
Right.
external
I
Uh-huh.
website.
guess that the part that I like the most is actually the structured reasoning and structured response, right?
Okay.
So what I mean by that is the way that our system reasons through law is what took Lena,
Mm-hmm.
almost 30 years of experience to hone, right?
Yeah.
So from a Supreme Court level all the way down to, just helping someone
Mm-hmm.
fix their patio. So all of that reasoning is basically a very high level look at how you can think through law, but also
Mm-hmm.
the other side of it is how do you synthesize all of the information you've done. You've collected documents, you've gotten a deep understanding of the law, you
Mm-hmm.
have a deep understanding of your own facts and your own case objectives, and then you bring that in and you
Yeah.
create you synthesize that into a report that's structured exactly the way the very best of lawyers would do it for you,
Yeah, but
right?
law
And
isn't just about speed. It's about
yeah,
precision, trust, and airtight arguments. So, Fred, could you tell us
mm.
how my AI law ensures that AI-generated legal insights are not only fast, but also reliable, legally sound, and most importantly, ethically compliant?
I think the way to understand how we're actually trying to become very, very accurate and precise, and of course, the morale, the ethical compliance is absolutely baked into everything we do. But one of the things that we've done is we've created layers of AI agents that actually kind of work in parallel across, a number of different layers in order to create kind of a contextual mapping of not just the documents themselves, but the meaning behind the document, the concepts in them. And then we basically adapt this and refine it to really be very much like what a human researcher would do. So we have it's a multimodal structure, so it's not just text. We can actually look at images and footnotes, and we can actually extract information from pictures. And then we create what we've done is a certainty score, and this really helps in flagging kind of ambiguous points. So if something is ambiguous, we can actually go loop through that and try to find a better source of information, or we can actually try to find a better way of understanding how it may tie in contextually back
Mm-hmm.
to the goals of the system. And one of the other ways we do this is because we're working with lawyers, and lawyers are, verbose and they're very smart, the way that they write and speak for the most part, right? We want to kind of improve the way the system works through this kind of continuous learning, working with lawyers together. So basically, we're helping lawyers, and the lawyers are helping us. So that over
Mhm.
time leads to a system that will become close to 100% accurate. We don't
Yeah.
want to say 100%, but we're probably going to get very, very close to actually getting you exactly the type of log, case, and structure that you need to understand. And then, when you tie that into the notification structure that we're building, you're going to know when things change. You're going to know when your strategy needs to make a shift, or potentially that your strategy no longer works, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to, research again, and we can even start structuring that for you. But if you have that correctly done, then, and then this information is all laid out correctly so that you can decide what parts you want to use and how you want to structure it. And we even have, one of the things that the ideas behind the confidence measures that we have is also kind of predictive. Like if you use this argument, you have a better chance of winning with this court in this jurisdiction with this judge,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that gives you kind of an insight that you wouldn't have unless you had experience, right? Like, oh, I've sat with that judge before. I know he doesn't like these arguments, or I know he likes this type of argument. So we can start mapping a structure that kind of gives you the highest impact to your
Yeah.
goals.
in-house counsel. We've done all the research. We've looked at all the privacy laws. We've looked at all the copyright laws, etc., and we've just made sure that we comply. So we get our cases from the public sources, the courts, and the legislation from the government, etc., and then we comply. We're going to comply with the criteria that we have
Uh-huh.
to, so that to allow us to use it, which is one of the states requires us to make all of those unreported judgments available for free. So
Mm-hmm.
but we do stuff to those documents, right? We put metadata, we do all kinds of stuff to the underlying document. But
Mm-hmm.
the face value document itself, for some states, they say we have to make that available to
Right.
the users for free.
Uh-huh.
And then we just make sure in terms of privacy law, we do not we comply. We don't do anything with your data. We don't sell your data. We don't sell your information about you. And
Mm-hmm.
we're not using your data we're not training, are we? We can't even access your data because everything's encrypted.
We try to be very good at ensuring that if you have any of your own, any data that you load, any documents, images, anything you want to load, you can actually encrypt and keep your own keys. What that means
Yeah.
is there's no way that
You
any
to
of
access
us
it.
can never access it. It is
Yeah.
encrypted at a very high level. Uh, Around the whole system itself, we use basically a type of encryption that makes it almost impossible to hack.
Uh-huh.
So you would need to be, like the NSA or Mossad to get
And
into our
Lena
system.
mentioned about the military grade encryption. So
That's
it's
right. Yeah. It's actually
unique.
used in, it's actually the encryption we use, we actually used when I built my self-driving cars in Tokyo, because we
Uh-huh.
were worried that because we were tied to the internet, we're driving with internet,
Yeah.
self-driving entirely,
Mm-hmm.
that if someone hacked our system, they would have full control of the car. So
Mm-hmm.
we wanted to make sure that we used a system called formal verification, which basically makes it impossible to hack
Mm-hmm.
a system unless you can hack both sides of the system in the same way at the same time, and they're very different. So like it's just you would have to be a genius or an AI, I guess.
Like in banks, it's impossible to hack, I hope. And I like that.
Well, nothing's
Mhm.
impossible, but it's going to be very, very, very hard. But even if you get into our system, you still need to go and now hack the
Yeah,
encryption that they have, that every client has. And every client's different. So even if you hacked one client, it doesn't mean you can hack
the other
all
one.
clients. So it would
Mhm.
just be, it's just not worth it if you're a hacker. They like
It's
the
not
easy
worth it.
targets.
A
Yeah.
waste
It's not
of
worth it.
time.
Yeah.
And I like that you emphasized earlier experience. And you mentioned
Yeah.
certainty score, and it's not stagnant. It gets updated accordingly.
Yeah.
And Lena ensures that the data is safe. And that's really reassuring because let's be honest, no lawyer wants to walk into a court quoting a case that AI pulled from someone's, say, legal fiction blog, you know? And
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
but
in
No,
us.
but
no, that,
well,
that will
it's
never happen with us.
I
Yeah.
that's
mean, we're sure that it's a real data in this case.
but we also want to make it clear that we're not, the lawyers still have to check everything. We're not saying that you don't,
Course
you still have to check it. I mean, we're confident that the checking
take place.
will take place and that it will verify that our results are correct. But we're not
Mm.
suggesting that you
Uh-huh.
do check. You still have to check because
Right.
some of the courts in Australia have handed down practice notes that say you can use AI in your submissions, but you must acknowledge that you've used AI and that you've checked it, which is what has always happened since day dot. If you get a paralegal to do work for you, a junior lawyer, you should check their work. You can't just
Of
assume.
course. Uh-huh.
Mm.
And that brings us to the big question on everyone's mind, Lena. AI is rapidly evolving, and there's always concern about whether it will replace human judgment. So, in your experience, Lena, how do you see AI augmenting rather than replacing the role of lawyers in the future?
I think that the way you can look at it is that we all went to law school and we came out, but we really knew nothing. And so it's experience over time that helps you kind of work out, well, this argument may work, this argument may not work. And, and that at the end of the day, the courts seem to be really driven by merits. They like to be driven, provide the fairest outcome if they can within the bounds of the law. And also because while may have been working on the case for years, the judge comes to the bench and hasn't really thought about your case at all. And
Uh-huh.
so it's really important. Why I think that's why it's so important that you have to distill your very complex arguments to very simple concepts, because for that judge, sometimes those concepts they're not familiar with.
Yeah, they
And so
never
if you
encountered.
try to run a very technical argument that because I found a case from 500 years ago in England that says that this particular principle, but it's never really been applied before since then unless you're Lord Denning, who was like a famous English judge who liked to do that, he would go back to 500-year-old cases and find a point of law. And he was always often in the minority in the Court of Appeal, and he would go up to the House of Lords. That it's only your experience as a lawyer that tells you, yes, technically that argument is available, but it's not going to work. So I think the AI will find all of these technical arguments. You can sift through everything, you can find it for you.
Yeah.
And it's human judgment and experience which will say, yeah, that's not going to work. That argument is so archaic, so complex, that judge is not going to be open to it. And they're really not very open to very complex ideas, or I don't think, because in my experience, they don't want to be overturned on appeal. So you really have to find the simplest pathway through to get your client to the outcome that they want. And if your pathway is really complicated, then you're unlikely to succeed. And I think that comes from experience. And so
Right.
the AI, eventually, if you have been using that AI for ages and you've trained it up and it's really become
Mm-hmm.
a version of you, then maybe
Yeah.
be better at picking which arguments may work and which may not work. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the difference is between an academic and
Mm-hmm.
a advocate or whatever with real life experience, right? So what we're really building is the academic, I would say.
Well, what
Mm.
a powerful perspective again, Lena, and the analogy that you said. Again, experience is a big factor here, and
Yes.
AI as a tool for enhancement rather than a replacement. With what you explained, it's clear that my AI law is designed to
Yes.
elevate human expertise, not eliminate it at all. So,
Yeah.
Lena, Fred, thank you so much both for taking us on this
Pleasure.
very exciting deep dive into the future of AI in law. It's inspiring to see um, tech being used not just for efficiency, but for making legal expertise more accessible than ever and reliable. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
To our audience, if you're in the legal field and want to experience the future of AI-powered legal research, check out myai.law. And remember, whether you're a lawyer looking to cut your research time in half or just someone who wants AI to explain contracts without inducing a migraine, My AI Law might just be your next new best friend. Thank you guys for tuning in and for inspiring us to provide more insightful episodes like this one with Fred and Lena. Until next time, this has been your host, Miles. Stay focused and inspired with Xraised.